A transgender woman is suing a social media app for discrimination in the federal court this week. Giggle for Girls is a now inactive Australian social media app that was designed to be used exclusively by women. Transgender woman Roxanne Tickle launched legal action after she was removed from the app in 2021. Tickle claims she was discriminated against unfairly because of her gender identity. But the creator of the app denies any wrongdoing and has repeatedly denied that Tickle is female.
It's a really substantial case. It has fairly far-reaching consequences. It's the first time a specific law has been tested. What's the story about?
So we're talking about an app today called Giggle for Girls. Mm-hmm. It's now inactive, but it used to be an Australian messaging platform.
What was it? I'd never heard of it before.
So me neither. I had a look into it. And on the App Store, this is the blurb, the description for this app. Mm-hmm. Made for women by women, connect on Giggle about the latest issues, politics, gossip, news and more. Promote your business and or yourself. Find accommodation and roommates. Connect privately to discuss your most intimate thoughts, all with mutual consent and without unwanted interruptions and misogynistic abuse.
Okay.
So my interpretation is it was kind of a platform to connect women to other women and women-led services, women-run businesses. Mm-hmm. I've heard of it referred to as kind of like a dating app for female business and friendship, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So a transgender woman whose name is Roxanne Tickle started using that app a few years ago, and she has now launched legal action against Giggle, who removed her from the app in 2021. Tickle is claiming that she was discriminated against unfairly because of her gender identity in Giggle's decision to take her off the platform. But the creator of this app has said they haven't done anything wrong. They've denied that discrimination was unlawful in this instance, and they've repeatedly denied that Tickle is a woman. Mm-hmm. So this case is really complicated, but it is in court this week, and that's why we're talking about it today.
Okay, before you go any further, I think it's fairly rare to have a case Giggle and Tickle, both in the name of it. And I think it's a bit confusing continuously using those two terms. So Giggle is the app, Tickle is the person.
Yeah, so it is really confusing and it makes light of kind of what is actually a really serious case. Roxanne Tickle is the person. Giggle is the app.
Okay, so explain a bit about Roxanne Tickle, who's at the centre of this case.
Yep. So the woman at the centre of this case, Roxanne Tickle, a transgender woman living in New South Wales. Her birth certificate has been updated to reflect her gender as female, but Roxanne was assigned male at birth and has since transitioned. Tickle downloaded this app, Giggle, in 2021 and she set up an account. The app used AI photo checking technology to verify whether its users were women or not.
Which is what? Just taking a selfie of yourself and then it deduces whether or not. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not sure specifically because this app is now defunct what that photo checking process looked like, but Tickle downloaded it, used that software. The app determined that she was a woman and therefore she could create an account. But later down the track, later that year in 2021, Tickle was eventually blocked from the platform. That prompted her to launch a complaint with the Australian Human Rights Commission. And in that complaint, Tickle alleged she was unfairly discriminated against because of her gender identity by Giggle.
Okay, and so what's Giggle's perspective on this? We've heard from its founder.
In an interview with The Australian, the CEO of Giggle, Sal Grover, actually said that she herself manually removed Tickle from the platform after seeing her onboarding selfie.
So it wasn't AI, it wasn't anything like that. It was the founder specifically removing this person.
Yeah. Tickle ended up escalating that complaint that she had made to the Human Rights Commission to the federal court. That was after the CEO of Giggle, Sal Grover, had chosen not to participate in formal talks between Tickle and the Human Rights Commission. So Tickle lodged a complaint. There was an opportunity for the app CEO to meet with Tickle with sort of a mediated talk. She rejected that opportunity. So then that's why this case was escalated to the federal court. Grover has continued to reject that Tickle's gender is female.
Okay, and so that's the basis on which they are refuting these claims. But it's obviously an extremely complex topic. You know, this elicits a lot of emotions on both sides. What does the law say, though, in a situation like this?
This is where it's kind of interesting. And as you mentioned at the top, there are laws, but new laws. And this case is actually the first time that alleged gender identity discrimination within Australia's Sex Discrimination Act has been heard in the federal court. So we have a Sex Discrimination Act in Australia that's been around for a long time. But this specific caveat or clause around gender identity discrimination is newer. So changes in 2013 to that act made it specifically unlawful to discriminate based on sexual orientation, gender identity, or intersex status. Grover, who again is the founder of Giggle, rejects the discrimination claim, and her lawyers are arguing that Tickle is a man and was therefore lawfully discriminated against when Giggle deleted the account. Giggle, an all-female, only female app, its founder deciding that there was a user on the app who was not female and then removing that account. That sort of forms the basis of that legal defense.
Okay. And I'm curious how a legal defense like this is being paid for when we've said it's an inactive app, but now it's getting all of this publicity. It's before the courts. How is it being funded?
Yeah. So this is an interesting one, and I think speaks to the broader conversational interests that we see when a case of this nature is in the media. The app isn't active anymore, as you said, but Grover's legal team have actually crowdfunded more than $500,000 to pay for Giggle's legal defense. That's an extraordinary amount of money, $500,000. And that tells us that there's obviously a lot of people in the community who are interested in supporting this defense. Former Liberal Party candidate Catherine Deves is actually among the lawyers representing the platform Giggle in court. Deves, if you forgot or in case you need a refresher, Deves is the person who ran in former PM Tony Abbott's Sydney seat of Warringah in the lead up to the 2022 election. She made a lot of headlines at the time, was accused of transphobic comments. She had a lot to say about transgender women in sport. She did not win that seat, but she became kind of a controversial figure around then. So that person, Catherine Deves, is representing or is among the lawyers representing Giggle now in court.
And we've seen a lot of photos of, you know, Deves walking alongside Grover as they enter court. It's not a live stream, so we can't actually watch what is happening in court, but we know that it's unfolding this week. What happens next? This, as we've said, will have like a fairly significant outcome for Australians.
Yeah. So the federal court case is due to run until the end of this week. As you mentioned, not live streamed. We're not in the room. So we have to kind of wait and see what happens, what the court reports say in the meantime. But ultimately, the court is working to determine if Tickle was unfairly discriminated against based on her gender identity. And part of this is going to involve the court either accepting or not accepting her gender identity as a woman. So that is a pretty big question mark, or the central question mark at the heart of this case. And it's a decision that could really set a precedent for future gender discrimination cases, you know, one way or the other. It could extend to discussions around the inclusion of transgender people in community sports, in public spaces, across the board. So it will be a significant decision, and hopefully we'll hear something by the end of this week or next week, and we'll keep you updated.